Hello, this is Eva Romero. I'm the founder and the executive director of the National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. And this is going to be a lived experience interview with Radhika, who I've known now for about 4 or 5 years. We share something in common. Both of us have had a family tragedy that brought us together. And Radhika is going to share out her personal story that links over to the connection that we see between mental health conditions, such as OCD in particular, and substance use disorder. So, Radhika, I just want to welcome you. It's great to see you again, and I'm just so grateful that you're willing to share your personal story. I know from personal experience it is not easy to go down this path, and just want to thank you for that. I know that the students at UC Berkeley who we're creating this video for will get a lot out of this message that you have for them, and so will others that have the opportunity to view it later after this presentation. So thank you, welcome, and look forward to having a conversation about this.
Thank you, April. Appreciate that.
So let's get started, Radhika, by just sharing what you can about your son. I mean, this is going to be focused on your son, who was a UC Berkeley student.
That's right.
And unfortunately, he's no longer with us. And, I know that you have a lot to share about how, that evolved, what, his condition was, OCD, and, how early it started, and, signs along the way, and that sort of thing. And then ultimately what happened to him down path from there. So yes. Share about your son. I want people to know he was a real person, a real student at UC Berkeley. So share your memories of him along the way also.
Yes, absolutely. No, I don't want him to be just remembered for how he died, but more of who he was as a person. And Nandan, my son, was absolutely, one of those who was super brilliant in academics and very, very wonderful, kind person. He would go out of his way to help people. And I want him to be remembered for that. He was a good friend to many. And, of course, for us, he was very precious. And, he would go out of his way to help his little sister. He was just one of those very caring human beings. When my mother came, he would kind of hold her hand and walk if she, she's elderly and couldn't walk, and he would just jump out of his seat and try to help elderly people. He was just that type of person, and I want him to be remembered for all of that.
Of course you do. I totally understand that. So he's a student over in high school. He's getting through school well and doing well because, as you said, he was just a brilliant young man. He chose UC Berkeley to go to school.
That's right.
And so tell us about that. What was his major? What was his focus there as he started his new experience in the scholastic world?
Yeah. So I think for probably when he was in the 9th or 10th grade, I think he had already decided that he was going to go to UC Berkeley. And he had already decided that he was going to major in chemistry. Somewhere in the 9th grade, he had done an extra course in chemistry at Las Positas College, and he became so interested in chemistry. He said that his vision was to go to the Department of Chemistry at UC Berkeley. He just retained that as a goal. So we were really, really proud of him when he actually got the admission, because, as you know, it's quite tough to get into the school. So, ultimately, he did get into the Department of Chemistry. He got what he had set out to do.
Great. All right. So he's a freshman at UC Berkeley. I assume he was living on campus. Was that the case?
That's right. He was living on campus. Yes. Mm-hmm. In the Bowles, that's the name of the residential hall where he was.
Yeah. So then, you're living fairly locally here in California, I know, and he's at school. Are you seeing him pretty frequently? Are you able to check in on his mental health and how things are going with his first year very, very often?
And that's the thing which I want to talk about, because even though we were literally just 45 minutes away from Berkeley, we live in Pleasanton. It could have been almost as though he was living 4,000 miles away. It was very difficult to get information about him and how he was doing. And, one of the things I do want to share is that he was he struggled with OCD, right? So we had, at the age of 10, he probably had OCD as a child, but then it became more serious only at the age of 15, where he started needing help. And we realized that he would probably need to go to a psychologist, a psychiatrist. So he was receiving all of that treatment when he was at home. He was on medication. When he went to college at Berkeley, there was no way for us to keep an eye on whether he was taking his medication or not, whether he was seeing the psychologist or not. And once he had crossed the age of 18, and we tried to get information whether he was on top of all of these, we were told that he would have to make the appointments himself, that we really can't get the information. And so even though we used to see him, he used to visit us, and we used to visit him on the campus, we didn't know how bad things had gotten, and they quickly escalated because, he was not getting all the help that he needed. There was very little awareness of his condition. And, he was I think he had put himself under tremendous stress trying to excel in academics. And that was another item. So I think with all of that, we didn't know that things were getting progressively worse and worse with his condition. And I think that at some point, we feel that he had actually completely stopped taking his medications. I should say that the OCD medication he is on is about 25 years old, meaning that there is no new research being done to develop newer medication. So he always, I think, never felt that he was getting full benefit from this particular medication. So I think on campus, he started to self-medicate. And these are things that I think in a campus like UC Berkeley, it's very easy to self-medicate. It's very easy to get these kind of substances. So he was trying different things, which interestingly, I have found later are things that OCD researchers are actually trying out in clinical trials for their therapeutic benefit, except he was using himself as a guinea pig to try out these things. And in different doses, in huge doses, which was not helping him at all. He had stopped seeing his psychologist, he had stopped seeing the psychiatrist. And I think this is where I feel that campuses can do more, to help children who are walking in with conditions like OCD, because I think when you're already having a mental health issue like OCD, and then you add stress on top of it, it can quickly escalate. We learned that more recently that there is a huge correlation between mental health disorders and substance use disorders, And I think that when that underlying correlation is already there, I think it just takes a little bit of stress to kind of bring that right out. And that's what happened with my boy.
Right. And I know in the end, he did die from basically an overdose of medications. Can you share out what that was, though? Because I think what he passed away from was not a typical kind of medication that you think of in terms of overdose, right?
That is correct. Yeah, because I think we suspect now, we don't have full confirmation on this from the coroner or others, because again, he was ahead of his time. Remember that he was a chemistry major. So he was always 2 steps ahead of us in terms of the kind of sophisticated chemical substances that he tried, I guess. So this one is called Imodium, which we suspect he took in a large quantity. We still don't have absolute proof of this, but then we've heard in those days, back in 2015, when this happened, this was a very easy substance to get on the shelf. Now there's been more research. The FDA and the DEA are very aware that this is a very dangerous substance, and they've put more, constraints on getting that easily. But I think people need to be aware that there is this kind of substance which is out there that people can easily overdose on. It's very easy to get there. It used to be very easy to get their hands on this and, take large quantities.
Well, and that's what it takes. It's actually an anti-diarrhea medicine that is available, at least it was, and I guess it is kind of still behind the counter, but behind the counter at a pharmacy. You just can't walk in and pull it off the shelf. have to get it through a pharmacist there, but not with a prescription. And I do know from my own research, after you shared what had happened with your son, that it does tend to have opioid-like properties, or
That's right.
makes you feel as though you're on an opioid at some level. And in large quantities, some people abuse that drug, until they can get the next opioid, if they're struggling to get that, if they have an opioid use disorder. So Radhika, looking back, all of our interviews are meant to educate, certainly from a personal perspective. Yes. What advice would you have for students that might be tempted because of their mental health condition, whether it's OCD or anxiety or whatever the case may be, to self-medicate on whatever substance they think might help them stabilize? What would your advice be to them?
So I think my first advice is that they should definitely seek the help of a professional. I think it's important that even if you go off to college, and this is especially true for, folks who are going to be going away to college, staying in a dorm, etc., it's really important to stay on top of your medication and not stop taking that, and to make sure that you continue to keep your appointments with your psychologist, with your psychiatrist. And most importantly is to kind of think of ways to de-stress, because you know that college can be stressful. So be self-aware whether stress is getting to you. And because usually it is things, the trigger factors for going down the path of self-medication usually is associated with stress. And so you need to make sure that you're taking good care of yourself, and don't hesitate to ask for help. There is a lot of help out there, but you need to ask for it. It's unfortunate that people don't come and give it to you even without your asking. So you need to be asking for help. So make sure that you're always aware of what's going on with you. Don't hesitate to ask for help. Make sure you're continuing to see your professional therapist, your psychiatrist, etc. Make sure you stay on top of your medication. And most importantly, don't worry that, okay, I have to get this A grade, and get so hung up on that you forget to take care of yourself. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it sure is. And, the stigma that surrounds mental health as well as substance use disorder, it's so similar, right? And it keeps people from asking for the help that they really need. I really am getting excited about the fact that we seem to be making some progress in breaking down the stigma around both of them. Mental health first aid certification we've offered to coalition members and community members alike. We're about ready to offer it again, just to help people better understand what mental health is, and how to care not just for yourself, but to recognize either budding problems in others that you care about, or maybe they have a full-blown mental health condition that, if recognized and, you help support that person into treatment, they can recover from. So Radhika, thank you so much. Your son should be with us just like mine. They left us way too soon, but I like to think that by speaking out and sharing our stories, we're making a difference. So thank you so much. It's really an important message you have to share, and so appreciate you sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much, April. I just want to say one thing in conclusion, which is that I had worked a little bit with UC Berkeley as well, and we presented a talk about OCD and SUD to the social health workers. And actually what was nice was the health workers took it upon themselves to create some brochures connecting and showing the linkage between OCD and SUD. So there is, I believe, April, that you will distribute these as well, so that people can benefit from that.
Yeah, we'll have paper copies available, and also I'll try to see what we can do to make them available electronically too. So thank you for sharing those resources with us too. Thank you, Radhika. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, April.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.